here today. So I want to just thank everybody for taking time out of their night to join us. Let me put my screen here 1 second. So thank you for joining us tonight for the informational session and public hearing for Edward C. Levy Company. As you may have seen while you were hopping on, that we do have additional language services available for tonight's session. So for those of you that are wishing to listen in to a different language, please go down to your Zoom toolbar. We have interpreters available for this meeting in Spanish and Arabic languages to ensure effective communication for all participants tonight. If you wish to listen into those languages, please click on the interpretation button at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. It's got a little globe looking icon, and select Arabic or Spanish. For those with English speaking language, for those of the English speaking language, please also select the English language to listen into as well, so that you can effectively hear any translated languages in your own native language. So by selecting that language, you can hear everything that's spoken tonight. So before we get into the meeting, let's go over a few additional housekeeping items. Please note that all lines are going to be muted for tonight's session, but there will be opportunities to ask questions and provide statements, and we will let you know how to do those in just a few minutes. Please also note that this meeting is being recorded, and the recording for tonight's meeting will be sent out to all participants in a day or two, and it will also be posted online for you to view again. With the housekeeping items out of the way, I'm going to pass things over to tonight's moderator, Jennifer Dixon. So Jennifer, go ahead when you are ready.
Thanks, Caitlin. Really appreciate it. I know Caitlin was just mentioning the other language services that we are offering tonight, and just want to make sure that anybody who may be in the normal channel, you're going to want to, if you are an English speaker, also go in and choose the English language. That's going to let you hear any questions that come in through our Spanish language channel or our Arabic language channel. I mean, it just will be a lot better way for you to participate in the meeting. So I just wanted to reiterate that, because I know we've had some people joining us as we're just getting started here. So I want to go over really quickly how things are going to work tonight. So tonight we have basically two sections of the meeting. The first part of the meeting, we're going to do kind of a short presentation. We're going to follow that with some question and answer. We'll be able to have a little bit of interaction during that part of the night. Then at about 7 o'clock, or when questions are done, whatever comes earlier, we're going to shift over to the hearing portion of the night. And I'll remind you about this later, but that hearing portion is where we will be taking official comments on the record, and we won't really be responding to any questions that you might have at that time. After that part of the evening is over, I will go over ways you can continue to make comments, or you can get hold of us and ask us any questions that you might have following the meeting. A lot of times people will come to these kind of meetings, and maybe this will foster more questions, or maybe folks want to think about it and then come back with some questions, or give us some more comments on things. So perfectly acceptable. It's all open tonight, but I wanted to just let you know how those sort of two parts of the evening are going to run. A little bit about how we're going to ask questions tonight. So we do have some folks calling in as well. So this is going to be really important. If you are participating online via your computer or your cell phone, you can use the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen to type in any questions that you might have. Feel free to do that as the presenters are going through their questions. We are going to wait till the question and answer time at the end to address those. But sometimes you might have something that just comes up in the moment, and feel free to either wait and see if your question is answered, or go ahead and pop it in that question and answer box. Once we get to the question and answer part of the night, you can click that raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen, and that'll raise your hand so that we can call on you and allow you to ask any questions that you might have verbally. If you are calling in, you are going to want to use #2 on your phone to virtually raise your hand when we get to the question and answer part. So again, I'll remind you of this later, but it's always something to kind of keep in your mind as we start getting into the actual content of the evening. All right, so I'm going to invite my staff to turn their cameras on, especially our EGLE staff, but if any of my interpreters feel comfortable turning their cameras on, please do. A little bit about this evening that's different. You might have noticed if you've come to any EGLE meetings before via Zoom. This is the first time we've offered simultaneous interpretation. So we did this based on numerous requests from community members and other advocacy groups. And so we're trying to offer this service. We're hoping that it will be valuable. So if you have any comments on whether it was for you or not, we would love to hear those. We really do want to thank our interpreters for helping us out tonight. Without them, we wouldn't be able to offer these other languages. So interpreters, thank you so much for being able to be here. I'm going to just run through my staff really quickly now, and I will reintroduce them again when we get to the panel portion of the night. But first, I should probably introduce myself. That was rude of me not to. I'm Jennifer Dixon, and I work in our air quality division. And like Caitlin said, I'm going to be moderating the meeting tonight, and I'll also be the hearing officer. The next person that I want to introduce to you is Chris Etheridge. He is one of our assistant air quality division directors, and he's also the decision maker for this permit. So Chris, I think maybe you'd like to say a few words to folks this evening.
Sure. Thanks, Jen. Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules tonight to listen in and offer your thoughts on this decision-making we're doing for the permit. We really appreciate and value everyone's input on this process as we go through it. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris. Chris is going to be on the whole evening, and you aren't going to really be hearing from him, but he will be listening in tonight and making sure that all the things we talk about are part of his decision. The next person that I want to introduce you to is Jake Young, and he is our permit engineer for this project. You're going to be hearing a lot from him in a couple minutes when I get done talking. And he's going to walk you through some of the permit review process, some of the rules and regulations that we look at, things like that. Another person that you're going to hear from tonight is Jeff Korniski, and he is our assistant district supervisor in our Detroit district. He's going to be talking with you a little bit about what the district's role is, how we do air quality inspections, respond to complaints, and things like that. So appreciate Jeff being on as well. We have a few other people on our panel that are going to be around for the question and answer portion of the night. We have Susan Kilmer. She is our air monitoring supervisor. We have Jim Haywood. It was the air modeler for this site. So monitoring, modeling, if you don't know the difference right now, that's okay. We'll try to walk you through that in a little bit. And then we also have Mike Deppa on the phone, I'm sorry, he's in the meeting. Mike, apologies for that. And he is our toxicologist on this project. So once we get to the question and answer portion of the night, most of those folks will get their cameras back on and be able to help answer some of our questions. But for now, if staff want to turn their cameras off, you can. But Jake, if you want to just leave yours on, that would be good. So a little bit again about how we're going to run through the evening. We're going to do an information session. So again, like I said, Jake is going to be talking to you about the proposed permit. We're going to then move into that question and answer session of the night. Once we get past the question and answer, if you guys are done asking questions and it's before 7 o'clock, that's fine. If we get to 7 o'clock, what we'll probably do is table the rest of the questions and try to get back to folks individually, just so that we can move on to that public hearing portion. And as a reminder, that's when we will take official comments on the record for you. After that, again, do not feel obligated to submit a comment tonight. You don't have to. You have plenty of time to be able to do that after this meeting is done. The comment period does stay open until October 23rd. So we will talk about how to submit an official comment. There's a variety of ways to do that, where you can find other information if we didn't answer your questions tonight, or you just want to dig a little deeper. And then we'll talk really quickly about how you can get a hold of us if you have other questions. All right, so that being said, I think I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Jake. So Jake, if you want to go ahead and just share your screen over mine, I'll let you know when you're sharing, and then you can take it away. All right, looks good on my end. So go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right, sounds good. Good evening, everyone. Like Jen mentioned, my name is Jacob Young, and I'm the lead permit engineer who worked with a team of air quality staff here at EGLE to review Levy's air permit application. Before we get into the details of the project, I'd like to briefly talk about what the Air Quality Division does and how the permitting process works. We all know that pollution comes from different things such as big farms, fuel-burning vehicles, and various industrial sources. The overall mission of the Air Quality Division is to protect public health and the environment. We provide this protection by using our authority under state and federal laws through the regulation of industrial sources. Air Quality Division staff do many different things. For example, we monitor levels of air pollutants. We look at different toxic air contaminants to make sure public health is protected. We conduct inspections of regulated facilities like Edward C. Levy. And we review applications and write permits for sources of air pollutants to ensure that the operations comply with the rules and regulations in place to protect public health. The Air Quality Division has the authority to permit sources of air pollutants. However, I do want to point out a few items that the permit does not cover and that the Air Quality Division does not have the ability to regulate. You will want to talk to your local government if you have questions or concerns about issues such as zoning, noise, and traffic. Additionally, the AQD does not determine whether a facility or modification is needed when reviewing an air permit application. We evaluate a project to ensure that it meets the applicable air quality rules and regulations. I'd like to give a simple overview of the steps a company and the AQD go through to get a proposed draft permit ready for comment. First, a company decides they would like to install, modify, or construct a piece of equipment, such as the grinding plant that Edward C. Levy is requesting to construct. The company submits a permit application to the AQD. The application goes through a review, during which the engineer evaluates the information the company submitted as it relates to the state and federal air quality regulations. If the project appears to meet the rules and regulations, the engineer creates a proposed draft permit. Once the permit is reviewed by the AQD inspector, it is sent to the company for review, and in certain cases, such as this one, the draft permit is posted for public comment. Anyone can comment on the proposed permit, including the company. Once the comment period ends, all comments received are evaluated and can potentially impact the permitting decision. Finally, a decision is made on the permit. This decision may be to approve the permit as written, approve the permit with changes, or to deny the permit. The decision is based on the ability of the company's proposal to meet the regulations. We cannot base our decision on the need for or popularity of a proposal. Edward C. Levy has submitted a permit application for a new grinding plant to produce ground granulated blast furnace slag. If approved, the facility will be located at 8941 West Jefferson Avenue in Detroit. Blast furnace slag is a byproduct of the steelmaking industry. As the steel is melted, impurities from the iron ore float on top of the molten iron as slag. The slag is removed by skimming from the top of the liquid metal and cooled with water before being transferred for additional processing. The composition of the slag is dependent on the composition of the raw materials used in the steelmaking process, but is typically a mixture of metal oxides and silicon dioxide. Once received by Levy, the blast furnace slag is dried before being ground to a fine powder in a ball mill. The ground slag is mixed with cement to create a final product that is more durable than traditional cement alone. While reviewing a proposed project, the AQD looks at several things. We review the level of emissions to determine how the project and the facility should be classified. Based on the level of emissions and the type of equipment, we determine what type of review is needed, including which rules and regulations the proposed project is subject to. Typically, the first step of a permit review is verifying the math and scientific logic the company has used to estimate the emissions for their proposed facility. I will walk you through a very simple example of how that can be done. We consider how much material will be used, for example, gas burned or slag ground, and how much of a pollutant is emitted for a specific amount of material used. This number is called an emission factor and is often expressed as pounds of pollutant for each ton of material used. When this calculation is done, we see how much of each type of pollutant may be emitted. This is the starting point for our evaluation. We ask ourselves, do these emissions meet the required rules and regulations? Levy is proposing to process approximately 315,000 tons of blast furnace slag each year. The proposed throughput was used as the basis for calculating the facility's potential to emit using the emissions calculations like I described on the previous slide. Although other pollutants were evaluated, the permit conditions limit the emissions of particulate matter to 15.4 tons per year, particulate matter less than 10 microns to 5 tons per year, and particulate matter less than 2.5 microns to 2.41 tons per year. One of the areas which you might be interested are how the project was reviewed for toxics, as required by Michigan rules. The toxics from the project were compared to state of Michigan health-based screening levels, which were set at levels to protect public health. Most of AQD screening levels are for individual pollutants, and most of these pollutants in this review were evaluated that way. Since people are exposed to multiple pollutants at once, this is a limitation to the rules. Based on the potential air impacts, the proposed emissions will not violate the health-based screening levels. The proposed draft permit includes emission limits on particulate matter less than 10 microns, particulate matter less than 2.5 microns, and visible emissions. When we're talking about visible emissions, we're referring to how much dust is present using a visual measurement by a trained visible emissions reader. The permit also includes limits on the amount of raw material that the facility may process, as well as the amount of finished product leaving the facility. To ensure that the dust collectors are operating properly, the facility is required to monitor the pressure drop of each dust collector and maintain that pressure drop within a range recommended by the manufacturer. In addition to emission and material use limits, the permit conditions include several requirements that will aid the AQD in verifying that Levy is complying with all the applicable air quality rules and regulations. The permit requires Levy to implement and maintain a fugitive dust control plan to ensure that dust from the site is minimized, as well as a malfunction abatement plan to ensure that all control devices on site are operated properly. Levy is also required to install gauges that measure the pressure drop across each dust collector and sound an alarm if the value exceeds the range recommended by the manufacturer. Additionally, the permit requires Levy to look for visible emissions daily, and the facility will be required to verify particulate matter emissions through stack testing within 180 days after starting operations. There will be a panel of AQD staff that can answer any questions you may have about the proposed project. But first, I'll pass it over to Jeff Korniski, who works in the AQD Detroit District Office, to talk a little bit about the inspection process for facilities like Levy.
Great, thank you, Jake. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Korniski. I'm the Assistant District Supervisor for the Detroit District Office, which covers air emission sources located in Wayne County. There are a number of ways inspectors check for compliance. One is by inspections, which are usually conducted unannounced. New sources, such as this Levy plant, are inspected within the first year of startup and then inspected on a regular basis thereafter. When we conduct an inspection, we are on site at the facility looking at everything related to the permit, to state regulations, and to applicable federal regulations. This means physically looking at the equipment and the operation of the equipment, including the stacks and control devices, and reviewing the records that are required by the permit. For this particular plant, this means reviewing the records within the permit itself, within the fugitive dust control plan, and within the malfunction abatement plan. In addition, this source will submit annual emissions reports to our emissions inventory system, and these reports are also reviewed by our office. We may also conduct additional inspections in response to complaints. A complaint investigation is similar to an inspection and typically focuses on the area of the plant which might be associated with the complaint. After we conduct an inspection, we write a report, and once the report is finalized, the report is uploaded to EGLE's website and is available to the public. So thank you, and I'm now going to pass it back to Jennifer to bring us into the question and answer portion of the night.
Yeah, thanks to both of you. Appreciate that part of the conversation. And Jeff mentioned complaints and things like that. We will go over how you can get a hold of us if you have any complaints or concerns, not only just for this facility that's being proposed, but any facilities there in Wayne County. So we will go over that in a little bit. But if I can have my other panelists go ahead and turn your cameras on. So that's Jim Haywood, who was our air modeler, Mike Deppa from our toxics unit, and then Susan Kilmer, who is our air monitoring supervisor. And just as a reminder, so if you have questions, feel free to type them in the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. I do know we have some folks that have called in. So if you have called in, go ahead and click #2 on your phone to get your hands raised. Okay, so Caitlin, there is a question in the question and answer that is about connectability issues. So if you don't mind looking at that and seeing if you and Jim could help that person get access to the meeting, they're having a problem signing on.
Yep, will do.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, so we're going to get right into questions here. And the first question is, so what happens in the event of multiple violations? Is there any capacity to shut the facility down? Is there any penalty other than fines? And does EGLE tell people about violations in the language they can understand? So it's a few questions. They're all important. So let's talk about them individually here. So what happens in the event of multiple violations? I'm going to let Jeff talk about that in just a second, but just to address, is there a way that we tell people about violations in languages they can understand? I know it is challenging to read our violation notices. We do try to detail out exactly what rules and regulations or what permit conditions were violated in those violation notices. If there is ever any question, you're looking at that. I know a particular one that we used to deal with a lot was Rule 201. Well, a lot of times people don't know what Rule 201 is, but for us, that's the rule that basically says you installed something that needed a permit and you didn't get a permit. So if you're ever in a situation where you're looking through the information that we have online about a specific facility, whether it's this levy facility in the future or another levy facility or anywhere in Wayne County, and you're having an issue like that, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to explain those. They're available online. The responses to the violations are available online, but we're always happy to explain those as well. So Jeff, can you just talk a little bit about the enforcement process? And I know we don't have the ability to shut a facility down in a case like this, or unless there's really an imminent danger to public health, but maybe you can talk a little bit about the enforcement process.
Sure. So non-compliance is dealt with in a few different ways. When we do an inspection, or perhaps we're doing a complaint investigation and we notice that something is an aspect of the plan is non-compliant with their permit or with the associated rules. If it's a relatively minor, insignificant violation, we may say correct it. One of these examples of that is not necessarily in this plant, but there are cold cleaners at many facilities and they're required to have their top down. They're required to have signs posted describing how the cold cleaner is to operate. And if you don't have a sign up, we might just say, hey, your permit requires that you have a sign posted, and we expect that it to be posted, expeditiously if we find it's not there. Most violations, we issue a formal violation notice, and once issued, the facility has 3 weeks generally to respond. We take into account the response and the thoroughness of the response and whether or not the violation has been addressed. And typically most violations are resolved in that manner. When you have either multiple violations within a short span of time, or, and this is getting into a little bit of the weeds of our program, but if you have what's called a high priority violation, which is defined by EPA, then in both of those instances, those are generally referred to our enforcement unit for a formal resolution of those violation notices through a consent order. And so that's the second typical way that we will resolve violation notices, is through the order. There are other cases which are not usual, but do happen every now and again, where we might have to go to court if the facility continues to dispute our allegations that we list in a violation notice. We may have to go to a court to have it adjudicated. Or in other instances, instead of going through a consent order process, we'll do a consent judgment through a court where both parties, ourselves and the company, are agreeable to a settlement, but it's done through a court process. So the vast majority of violation notices are resolved with a response that we may consider adequate, but if it's not adequate, or even if adequate, if there's a number of different violations that occur in a short period of time, we will refer that to our enforcement unit for resolution.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jeff. I know that process can be somewhat complicated. And I guess what I would like to add to that is we don't hesitate to escalate things to our enforcement unit if we have facilities that aren't cooperating with us and aren't responding in ways that we know they need to fix the violations. There is a question in here that I'm going to send to Mike Deppa. So Mike, the question came in about, you know, potentially people that are living around this facility, walking around in the breathing zone around the facility itself. I was wondering if you can start a little bit talking about how we looked at the toxics in this case. And then I was thinking I might have Jim Haywood talk a little bit about the modeling, if that's okay. So I don't know if you can give us a start there, and then we'll see if Jim
Sure.
wants to kind of close some stuff up with that.
Hey, so the air toxics rules regulate what type of screening level is applied to an air pollutant, and we derive health-based screening levels based on the toxicity data. And Jim models the emissions and gets a fence line concentration. And if that fence line concentration of particular air toxic is below the screening level, then it's considered safe for that pollutant. And all the metals that were evaluated for this permit were well below their screening levels, tens, hundreds, thousands of times below the screening level. That leads us to believe that there's very little health concern from the emissions from this facility.
So Jim, so thanks for that, Mike. I know when you say considered safe, you know, we're looking at screening levels. Those are health-based standards that are developed based on various research studies that our toxicologists look at and develop those screening levels over time. That word safe is always a hard one. So I know if we have other questions, or if you're interested in looking more at the toxics review of this permit, we can definitely talk a little bit more about that, or we can provide some more information as well. But I do want Jim to talk about the modeling that he did. So remember, we talked in the beginning of the meeting, there's a little bit of a difference between modeling and monitoring. So this part is modeling. So this is part of the work that we do before any sort of equipment is installed as part of the permit review. So this is looking like at, I would say, almost like a future cast of what we expect a facility to be doing if they installed as we did the proposed permit. So Jim, if you want to, and you can decide if you want to share your screen or not to talk through this, but I'll go ahead and turn the mic over to you for a few minutes to talk about the modeling that you did.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Yeah, I'll share my screen in a second, but let me give a little prelim before we get into that, because a lot of people don't understand what modeling is and why we do it. Essentially, before the permit people can approve a permit, they have to be assured that this particular process or the facility is not going to cause or contribute to a violation. Well, how do you know that before it's built? You can't go out there and put a monitor out there to measure something that's not out there yet. It doesn't tell you anything. Well, we do it in a predictive way, and that's where the air dispersion modelings come in. A computer simulation is what we use, and it's provided to us by EPA. They write it, and they update it, and they maintain it. What we do is, our initial thing that we do is we built virtually the facility inside the computer. We put all the stacks in there. We put the roads in the facility that's in there. We take into account the maximum potential emissions that are going to be coming out of those stacks, what's going to be coming off the road fugitive as the trucks drive around. We build the buildings around there because the airflow is disrupted as it goes around those buildings, and we use multiple years of meteorology, the local meteorology, and we put all that in there. Then we build a whole host of virtual monitors out there, literally tens of thousands of virtual monitors out there, almost one in every backyard. And what it will do after we run the model, it will tell us that if a real monitor was out there after the facility was built and it's operating at its peak capacity, what could we expect air quality to be at each one of those virtual monitors? And if any of those monitors exceed an air quality violation, then obviously the permit does not get issued. But before we get to that point, we want to know, does that facility, is it even going to have an impact on air quality? Yes, obviously every place will, but EPA understands that somewhere you have to draw a line in the sand. And so they provide to us what they call a significant impact level. And what they tell us, if the facility is modeled and we can show that all of their impacts, all property, will not exceed that significant impact level, then that facility will not be considered to cause or contribute to any violation of the health standards. And this is where I'm going to hijack your screen. And Jen, if you can give me a thumbs up
Yep.
when you see that.
You got it.
Got it. What this is showing us is that the fact that after we did the modeling for the significant impact level, we do in fact have a small area here that exceeds what the EPA calls basically the line in the sand, where it will or won't be able to contribute to any kind of a violation. But what you see, it's very close by. The leave-out facility is right in this area. And to be honest, most of those impacts are caused by truck traffic driving around the facility. You will notice up here is the Trinity monitor, which is the closest monitor. And it's also the worst case monitor in that area, where you have a 3-year average of 11.7 micrograms per cubic meter. Now the standard is 12, so obviously very close, and we cannot let it go over that. We won't let it go over that. But what we do know is, since this particular area at 11.7 is outside this area that could potentially cause or contribute to a violation, that in fact that this facility operating at its peak capacity will not cause or contribute to a violation in that area. In fact, if you look at it, that small area where we do have some relatively higher numbers, greater than 0.2, not by much, but a little bit greater than 0.2, is really located, again, right around the Levy facility and just some industrial areas right around there. And so that's what we have to do to start the process. If we do have any impacts there at our virtual monitors that are in excess of this 0.2, which we do have, then we go the extra step in what we call refined modeling. And that is just to make sure that we aren't going to violate any health standards anywhere. And the modeling for that is composed of 3 elements. Number one, you've got your facility that's proposing for an application operating at its maximum potential. You have a background concentration, which is hopefully not impacted by any of the other sources in the area, because that is the third component. So it's 3 things. It's the facility being proposed at the maximum allowable emissions, and uncontaminated background number coming in, and then also all of your nearby sources, which can directly impact your facility. So we've gotten a lot of comments that we did not use the Trinity, and that's simply because this monitor not only has the background in it, but it's also being impacted by all the other sources in the area. So what we did is we chose one that was 6 miles upwind at Allen Park, because it's not going to be directly impacted by any of these other sources in the area. And then we put all these other sources in the area into the model, again, same as the proposed facility operating at their maximum potential emission rate. Once you put all those 3 in and you model those together, it cannot be greater than the design value, which again is the 12 micrograms per cubic meter. In this case, it wasn't. The combined value that we got was less than 2 micrograms per cubic meter. So that is one way that we were fairly assured that we aren't going to have any problems causing or contributing to a violation. We've gotten a lot of comments that we should have used the Trinity, and we could do that. EPA does give us an out that if you do have a very close monitor, you can almost consider that to be an on-site monitor. The only change that would be is that since this monitor is directly influenced by these big sources in the areas, we have to take those out of the model, or we're going to be double counting those impacts. We looked at that, and we found out that the Levy contribution to the Trinity monitor was only going to be about 15 thousandths of a microgram. That's 0.015, which clearly is not going to push this number over 12. And so we looked at it in 2 different ways. Number one, using a background and the nearby sources in the model. And then the other is to use the local model, but taking the sources out that local monitor will already be reflecting. So that's kind of the long-winded way of looking at that. But again, that's the process that we do. We need to know before the facility is built, before the facility is emitting at their full potential and their full capacity, will it cause or contribute to a violation? In this case, looking at it in two different ways, we determined that it would not. So I am going to.
No,
Yes.
that's good, Jim. I appreciate you walking us through that. I know the modeling it's interesting because we do try to forecast what things are going to happen there if the facility was built. So there's a follow-up question to this, and I don't know that we can provide an answer right here, but I do want to read the question because I think it's important. The question was, if the 3-year average were taken using the 2021, 2022, and 23, instead of using the uncharacteristic year of 2020, would the result have been different as far as exceeding the NAC? So just to speak, and I'll turn it over to you in a second here, but the 2023 data, we don't use that because it hasn't been quality assured yet. So that wouldn't be available for us to use in this case anyway, but I don't know if you if you have information or if you looked into that based on other questions that you could respond to it. And if you can't, like I said, I think it's an important question and we can try to get that information to you if we don't have it here tonight.
Yeah, we ran our 3-year average on 2020, 21, and 22 because we had complete year data for that had been validated, both in meteorology and also for the monitoring data. Obviously, 2023 is not complete yet, so we don't have the complete net data for that. We also don't have the monitoring data, which also goes through a pretty intensive QA/QC check. So it'll be sometime during 2024, probably after June 2024 before, and Susan can probably correct me on that one. But it takes a little while for everybody to go through and QA and QC that data before it's submitted to EPA. So that's why we haven't included it. I mean, theoretically, we could go in and run it with unqualified data, but it's not something that we could validate.
Right. So I'm going to have Susan respond to see if she knows kind of timing on that. But this was another follow-up question, which I think is important too. Is there any precedence or is there an allowability in EPA's guidance and our guidance to choose a different year instead of 2020? Like, could you have used 2019 or 2018 or something like that instead? Or have we ever done that? I don't know if we've even ever done it. So
no, we don't like doing that. EPA doesn't like us to do that. They like us to use the most recent data that's out there because you do get trends and weather patterns that will change over the year. So you want to use the most recent because that's going to be the most reliable of what's happening right now.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for talking about that. I didn't know that either. So Susan, do you have any kind of thoughts on when we typically have that data ready? I know you probably don't have a specific date, but like a month, a time of year, something like that.
Sure. So the last quarter of this year will be uploaded to the EPA database by or no later than the end of March. And then we go through a final process to certify that data by May 1st. So the data will be available by the end of March, but fully certified, quality assured by May 1st. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, I think that's helpful. And a lot of that data we do put out in our annual air monitoring report. It's available online. So if there are folks on that are interested in that, we're happy to point in the right direction there as well. It's a lot of numbers, but it is interesting. So again, we're happy to share where that is. We do appreciate when people look and use our air monitoring information for things. So this question, Jake, I'm going to go to you for it. It is talking about how we talked about the emissions evaluation. And the question really is to potentially a misunderstanding of that. And Jim, I'll share my screen. Sorry, I should have shared over you a second here. Give me just a second, folks. And I will get there. But in the meantime here, let me just run this to Jake. So the question is, apologies. The question is basically, are we looking at or saying or trying to imply that there isn't going to be any emissions increases if this permit gets approved. So I know you didn't say that, but I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the process for evaluating those emissions again, and a little bit about those levels that are being proposed.
Yeah. So this is a new facility. So there is going to be an increase in emissions that were not previously permitted. I mentioned on a previous slide that the pollutant emissions that I mentioned earlier, there was 15.4 tons of particulate matter, 5 tons of PM10, and 2.4 tons of PM2.5. Those are new emissions that'll be as a result of this new facility.
So there will be new emissions that go in, but those are the ones that we look at. We compare them with our screening levels. We compare them with the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. We look at whether or not those are going to be approvable under the rules and regulations. So yes, there will be additions there, definitely, but they are relatively small in comparison to some other ones. So this is an interesting question too, and this is going to go to you, Mike. This is a question about air toxics and the screening levels. So the screening levels that we have now, a lot of times the way we look at them is changing. So what we might have considered safe for, like, for instance, and I'm just using this as an example, like PFAS years ago, now we understand more about that list of chemicals. And so we're doing different kinds of evaluations on it. So what I'm hoping that you can do is talk a little bit about how our toxics unit looks at different pollutants, how we evaluate them. They are always put out for public comment when we make changes to those screening levels. So if you can talk just a little bit about that process, I think that could be helpful for folks too.
Yes. So we've tracked over time how the screening levels have gone up if more information becomes available that shows that it's not as toxic as we thought. And sometimes they go down if information becomes available that shows it's more toxic than we thought. And on average, it's about the same number of chemicals that have gone up as have gone down, and by about the same magnitude. So you never know when new data is going to become available. But in general, it does not affect the overall, on average, it's no change.
Yeah, so the person who asked the question would like me to actually read the question. So I will read the question. I think you did a pretty good job of answering it, but there might be some more clarification. So have the standards of what has been considered, quote, safe been changing over the years, becoming more stringent, or have they remained the same? So I think Mike did speak to that. That's something that we're constantly evaluating. So just a little bit of information on this. EPA regulates hazardous air pollutants. It's a specific kind of group of pollutants, and there's 188, quote, hazardous air pollutants that are in there. In Michigan, we have toxics rules. A lot of states don't have these. In our toxics program, we have over 1,250 different toxics that we have specific health-based screening levels for. And that's what Mike's talking about. He's talking about those screening levels for things that aren't necessarily included in those national standards, but are things that we look at here in Michigan. So as part of the evaluation for this permit, we looked at several different toxic air contaminants. And so that's part of the job that our toxicologists do. Another part is reevaluating those screening levels on a regular basis and making sure there's not new studies that have created the requirement for those to be more stringent and sometimes relaxed. So hopefully that's helpful. If it wasn't, please let me know. I know that can kind of be a little bit of a different way of looking at things than maybe other states are doing and things like that. So can also be kind of interesting. another question about the modeling. So Jim, this goes to you, and we'll see if you can respond to this, but the modeling footprint, when you showed your map, showed a little bit of it over the river waterway. Is there something that we look at from a water impact or a deposition impact into the waterway or things like that when you're doing your modeling? Is there something different that you are assessing when it comes to that?
You're right. There was a little corner that was over the Rouge River. For just straight particulates, typically we do not do a deposition modeling. Occasionally we do, but it's more for the heavy metals like lead or mercury or something like that. But the short answer is no, we did not do deposition over the river.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so another question that came in, and I don't know if we know the answer to this one, but again, I think it's important to kind of talk through some of these questions. The question is this kind of material that Levy wants to create, the ground slag to be used in cement, is that done elsewhere in Michigan? And have we ever done soil sampling in any of those areas? So we wouldn't have done soil sampling. That's not something we would be able to answer today. We could maybe find out. I don't know if any of my panelists have any insight on this type of material being permitted, a similar facility being permitted in other areas of the state, or if this is being used in other areas of the state. If we don't know the answer, we could find that out too and get back to you. Do you have any insight on that, Jake? I think you might be probably the one on the panel that may know whether or not we have other permits like this one.
Maybe Jeff would be able to help too, but I do believe this is the same slag that they are currently processing at their facility in Dearborn. And
Jeff, do you
would
have
assume
any?
that's the same process.
Do you have insight on that, Jeff?
Yeah, so our understanding is this is coming from the Cleveland Cliffs mill. This particular slag, I understand, is from their basic oxygen furnace process. And so it's already being handled at what's known as their plant 6. So this is just a different location for the same material. It isn't being ground down to the level that it will be in this new facility, but it is processed just like, for example, a similar version of this would have been in place at what was called their plant 3 near US Steel. So in almost all of these integrated steel mills, you have a slag which is produced at various parts of the process, and that slag is then managed in some form or fashion by either the facility itself, or in this case, Levy, a different company operating on the Cleveland Cliffs property or nearby the property. And so this is a different end use for it. I'm not aware if there's anything in Michigan using currently the steel slag in cement, but in terms of handling the material, it's part and parcel to almost all steel mills. Yes.
So there's a quick question. Where is plant 6 again?
So plant 6 is right on, I'm going to get the streets mixed up, but I think it's on Mellon Road. It's right across the river on the southern side of the river, near the mill. So it's, it's sort of towards the western end of the property, the southwest corner on Mellon Street.
Okay. So this is a facility that we do have quite a few air quality violations for, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Those violations, if you go on our website, we have an enforcement notice for fallout. That's not necessarily from the processing of the material, but that is where it's dumped into the ground in order for it to be processed. And normally when you are, that is what we think perhaps is what's causing these fallout events. Not so much so a continuous operation like this mill will be at the West Jefferson location, but they basically have these large containers which have the slag, and in order to get it out, you deposit it into these pits, and you also then have to essentially knock that pot, because there is a little bit of the steel that's remaining in the pot, And it's either the dumping process or this trying to dislodge the steel in the pot, which creates sometimes these plumes of emissions. And the steel gets sent back to the mill to be recycled. So it is the same material, but it's, our understanding is it's probably not the same sort of process, which is causing the fallout events at the Plant 6 levee on Mellon Road.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. And just like we were talking earlier, if folks are interested in information about the other levee plant, we're happy to share that too. That is all available online. But I know sometimes it can be hard to find. So again, don't spin your wheels on that. If you can't find it and you're interested, please just reach out to us. We're happy to share that link as well. That one's sometimes a little bit confusing because I think it's the same stationary source as the Cleveland Cliffs facility. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah, it's the same stationary
Yeah.
source, but it has its own separate, for those that are not, we call it a renewable operating permit. So it is, although in the air quality, regulation world, it's one stationary source, but you will see it, on our website under a different, what we call, stationary number for that source.
Yeah.
So it'll be located in a different place other than Cleveland Cliffs. Although I will say, so this is how it gets a little complicated. There is a section of Cleveland Cliffs which has a levee plant, a different plant that's actually on the site that's part of that permit.
Okay, I think that's the one that I was thinking of then. Yeah,
Right.
okay. So again, our filing process online is not anywhere close to perfect. So if you're looking for something specific and you can't find it, or you're looking for a specific facility information and you can't find it, please just let us know. We're happy to do that. Okay, so just looking for some other questions. We've gotten a couple comments here. Folks looking for other places that this kind of material is being ground and used in paving. So we'll definitely look into that and see what we can find and share that information out. So appreciate folks asking for that. There's a question about looking at how the opening of the Gordie Howe Bridge might impact air quality in this area and what we might expect for that. I know that's not a question that we can answer right now in this meeting, but it is important to be thinking about. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I know we can't comment fully on those truck emissions and how those would be accounted for in a future way. And I don't know, Jim, so let me know when we're looking at the model itself, there's not a section, and I could be wrong about this, where we say, mobile emissions at all. And we don't regulate mobile emissions, but some of the monitors that we use, they do pick up, they're not discriminatory about what emissions they're picking up. They're measuring whatever is in the outside air. But there's not like a factor or anything like that that we would incorporate into a model to sort of account for a future truck traffic. I think you do truck traffic on the roads on the facility site, and maybe that's where I'm getting confused. So can you please clarify for me before I confuse everyone else?
No, I think you're very unconfused. We do model what the road fugitives will be on the property, on levee property, because we can calculate, we know how many trucks are going to be going up and down the road, the weight of the trucks, et cetera, et cetera. So we can model that because we can quantify those emissions. What we don't know is how to qualify the emissions from the other mobile sources outside the facility. And that's where the background monitor can come in handy. That is sort of the catch all the stuff that we can't directly put into the model. We consider it to be taken into account for by using the background monitor. And that's why sometimes it is nice to have a close monitor like Trinity. Again, we did not use that monitor for our background because of all the other sources it was picking up. But as far as the Gordie Howe Bridge, and maybe Susan can address this a little bit better than I can, I know there's been a lot of new roadside monitors that have been put in down in that area to be able to monitor what the particulates will be as a result of that bridge going in.
Yeah, Susan, do you want to speak to that a little bit? We do have quite a few stationary monitors in that area.
Yeah, that's correct. We do. In 2018, we put in 3 new sites right around the bridge. And so PM 2.5 and some metals, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, black carbon, carbon monoxide at a couple of the monitors. Those kind of things were added to that area. And we were able to kind of start this monitoring during the early phases of the construction of the bridge so that we can see and kind of evaluate those pollutants over time. So
Yeah, and those weren't, I know we kind of put them in as the bridge was being developed and all of that, but there's no plans in the future to take those away. We're planning to keep those there, at least for right now, right?
correct. There's no plans to shut any of those down.
Yep.
So yeah, during some of the early demolitions in the area to get ready for the bridge development was kind of the goal on the timing of when we got those sites established. It was hopeful to start monitoring in that area kind of before, during, and after construction of the bridge. So yep, we were able to get those up and going in 2018, and they're going to continue for a long time. So it's just something we'll have to kind of watch over time to see what those levels look like for the different pollutants.
Yeah, thank you for talking about that. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. So this was a question about air toxics, but it really might be more towards Jake or maybe Jeff, depending on how things go here. So it talks about the air toxics evaluation that, and I think this was what was submitted in the application. So I'm putting words in here that this might not be the intent of this question. So if it's not, please let me know. But the air toxics evaluation relied on a single test from 2018 of the source slag. So other testing by EPA might show some variation in slag content. And I think you did address that in your presentation, Jake, where you talked about some of this is a little bit dependent on what's being processed. But can we, and do we feel like we should request an additional more current sample results? So Jake, I don't know if you had any other follow-up or any other information about that slag test itself that you could speak to. And then if that was something that we would ask for, or we could ask for, that'd be helpful too.
So the original toxic determination was done with slag analysis that was done at the plant 6, which is the same slag that will be processed at this new plant. The permit conditions also include a condition that requires Levy to retest that slag at the request of the AQD district supervisor. Should the district office just have reason to believe that that original analysis is no longer accurate.
No, thanks for that.
Mhm.
So, and Jeff, if you could speak to how the inspection process might overlap with this. So at a facility that's already existing, like you were talking earlier about some issues that we're having. So as an inspector, would we be able to go in and say, hey, we need another sample of this slag, or we need a sample of, your product that you're making for testing to make sure that things are as they should be? Is that part of a typical inspection process, or when we might get complaints or things like that?
Yeah, so we have the ability to take samples and analyze them at a lab of our choosing. As Jake said, the permit does require the company to send a sample for analysis if we request it. But if the commenter has specific information about a wide variability in the slag, then perhaps that is a good comment for the actual comment period to adjust that condition to perhaps make it mandatory over a certain amount of time. We've crafted conditions in the past where a certain number of samples have to be taken over a certain period of time. And if it shows that there's a level of inconsistency, that sort of program of sampling should continue. And if it shows that it's relatively stable over time, then that program can kind of just fall by the wayside. So that, certainly that's a good comment. And I think we would be interested in that information about variability in slag, and we can take that into account.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I know we're we're just over 7 here, and we're going to get to that hearing portion of the night. A lot of folks put really nice information in the QA box. A lot of it is more, I would say, comment related, and I would encourage you to, if we didn't get to your question and you want to put it in as an official comment, please do that. You're not obligated to, but I just wanted to let you know we're not going to get to everything. If there's other questions in here that we don't get to, we'll try to address those after today. But there was one more that I just wanted to get to. I'm going to kind of use this one to close out a little bit. And it is kind of more of a comment, but it's something that I think might be important as well. So there has been some studies that show that levels of metals, specifically iron and street dust and soils around metal scrap operations, exceed EPA residential criteria. So in one case, iron was over 40% of the dust. So fugitive dust more broadly contains more toxic metals, but these tend to fall below screening levels in most cases. So soil and dust composition sampling aren't part of the completed analysis, but this person suggests that potentially a TSP monitor or dust soil sampling at the site could be considered to allay concerns in this area. So that does go a little bit to what you were just talking about, Jeff, where if there is a request for further sampling, further testing, things like that, that could be done through the permitting process or in another way, that's a great comment to put in. So panelists, I really appreciate you being on tonight. This was a great audience, very informed, a lot of really nice questions, some good technical questions. So I'm glad we got to hear Jim talk through that modeling. That was really important, and to hear about the toxics, et cetera. So if you are not Chris Etheridge, go ahead and turn your cameras off. Again, really appreciate the questions and the answers to all of those that we had so far today. So the next part of the night is going to be getting right into the hearing portion of the night. So we do have to read a specific statement to you to start the hearing, and then we'll also read a very short one to end the hearing. So just as a reminder, this portion of the night, we won't be responding to any questions that you might have, but you're very much able to pose a question in your comment, just to let you know that we won't be responding to those during this time. And then I will remind you how to raise your hand, et cetera, once we get to that portion of the night. So I do have to go ahead and, oh, I didn't want to do that yet. Sorry about that. And read that statement to you. Okay. And this will officially open the comment period. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this public hearing. My name is Jennifer Dixon. I am with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, or EGLE, and I will be the hearing officer tonight. Chris Etheridge, Assistant Air Quality Division Director, is the decision maker for this permit application, and he will be listening to your comments this evening. He will consider all comments prior to making decision. The hearing is related to a request from Edward C. Levy Company, or Levy, proposed to be located at 8941 West Jefferson Avenue in Detroit, Michigan. The company has requested that a new plant to produce a product that is an alternative to traditional Portland cement. The proposed air permit has requirements for emission limits to minimize dust, and testing requirements. The Air Quality Division is responsible for regulating sources of air pollutants to minimize adverse impacts on public health and the environment. The law governing those responsibilities is Part 55 of the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act. Before the company can install and operate any equipment, they must obtain a permit that meets the requirements of Michigan's air quality laws. This means the equipment must be capable of meeting state and federal emission standards, including health-based standards. The proposed permit must also contain emission limits and specific ways of operating the equipment to ensure these standards are met. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to give anyone interested in the proposed permit an opportunity to provide information we are able to use in deciding whether to approve the permit or if there are additional issues to consider. Please note the proposed permit is still a draft permit. This does not mean the department has already made a decision. Instead, it reflects an initial technical review of the proposal. We hope having the details of the draft permit available will help you in providing comments. Everything in the draft permit remains open for comment and further consideration by the department, including whether the permit will be granted at all. The department can only use the information you provide if it relates to the criteria we are able to use in making a decision. So for example, concerns related to local zoning, truck traffic, and noise are not within our authority. Some of you may want to simply express your support or opposition to the proposed project. We will be happy to make note of your position, but please understand the department is by law not allowed to base our decision on whether there is widespread support or opposition to the proposed project. This hearing is being recorded and your comments will be part of the information the department will consider in making its decision on the proposed project. The public comment period for the proposed permit began August 9th and will end at midnight on October 23, 2023. Additional comments or information may be submitted through that time via written or verbal comment during this hearing, by email or by voicemail. So after the close of the public comment period, the decision maker will review all written and verbal comments received. All significant air quality related comments will be considered, at which point a final decision on the permit application will be made by the decision maker. The decision maker may deny the permit, approve as drafted, or approve with amendments. If approved, the decision must specify which provisions of the draft permit, if any, have been changed in the final permit and the reasons for the change. In all three of these scenarios, all interested parties, including everyone who was on the original mailing list, anyone who provided comments during the comment period, and anyone who attended the public hearing will be directly notified of the decision. Included in the mailing will be a letter from the decision maker regarding the decision and, if applicable, the approved permit. As stated previously, you may submit a written comment at any time during the comment period by US post or email, or you may call in a comment to the public comment voicemail. You may also type the word comment into your question box and submit your comment that way. I will read aloud all comments you submit unless you state do not read. We have had people do that. So if you would like to make a verbal comment, you may raise your hand and I will unmute your line so you can speak. We will limit your comment time to 3 minutes. If you are speaking, I will let you know when you have 30 seconds left. I'll do my best to address commenters in the order your hands were raised, but please bear with us as the technology does have some challenges for doing that. So please recognize department staff are here tonight to provide a fair opportunity for you to express your views on the proposed projects and to listen to those comments. So thank you so much for your attention. I will now begin calling the names of those who have indicated they would like to make a comment. Okay. So I've got one hand raised already. So that's great. Actually, two. Perfect. All right, Kim Hunter, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. You're going to have about 3 minutes, like I said, to make your comment on. Just let you know when you have about 30 seconds left, but I'll try not to interrupt the flow of your speech if at all possible. All right, so Kim, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Kim
if you
Hunter,
don't,
Detroit resident.
Thank you. Sorry, I was
Southeast
just going to say,
Detroit.
please name, if you don't mind stating your name and if you have any affiliation. Apologize for that. If you wouldn't mind starting again, I would appreciate it.
Okay, Kim Hunter, Southwest Detroit resident. My comments are, we have enough crap in the air without adding metal chips in the air for us to suck down. If this facility is allowed, people will be sucking metal chips into their lungs, even if there are no violations. And there will be violations. It's not a matter of if, but when. People will be sucking metal particles into their lungs. The Levy Company has had a lot of violations in East Dearborn where they operate from. I don't trust the company not to violate its permit, which is a permit to pollute. What is considered safe has been changing over the years, and we shouldn't have to be scientists to protect our health and give strictly technical information. That's a violation of our rights to protect ourselves. All the assurances given by EGLE assumes there are no violations. This is from a company with a great history of violations. At best, the company will be fined by EGLE after the fact, after we have metal chips in our lungs and bloodstream. That's all EGLE can or will do. What we residents can do is to say no to breathing metal, say no to being a sacrifice zone. The people who bear the pollution, the burden of pollution for far more affluent and whiter communities, and for the company's profit at the expense of our health. Thank you, I'm done.
Thank you, Kim. We do appreciate your comment. The next person that I'm going to call is Simone Segovic. Simone, you should be able to unmute yourself and state your comment whenever you're ready. And I see you're unmuted, but I don't hear you talking. So try one more time there. Try muting yourself and then unmuting yourself again. Sometimes that helps. All right. Sometimes technical challenges get the best of us. You try one more time, Simone, and then I'll see if Jim Ostrowski might be able to help you too. Nope, we're still not hearing you. Apologize for that. So Jim or Caitlin, if you don't mind trying to help Simone so that we could hear her, I would appreciate that. I'm going to just move on to the next person, but we'll try to come back to you, Simone, okay? All right, so Deb Sumner. Deb, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and then go ahead with your comment whenever you're ready.
Hi, my name is Deb Sumner, and I am also a long life resident in Southwest Detroit. And Chris, I want you to really take into consideration the University of Michigan and their studies of our air quality. And I find it very extremely frustrating to hear the EGLE staff, oh, we're not there yet, you know, to meeting the level of concern with the 2.5 particulate matter. I mean, I don't know when we're going to get to the point of the fact that we have to look at the cumulative impact of what we're breathing now. We have so many health issues in our Southwest Detroit community. The air quality studies have been done. So 4A217, 4A209, 16 and 10, we are feeling and breathing the impact. Worst air quality in the entire state of Michigan. Then, surprise, we get fires happening in our sister country, in Canada, and then we've got our air quality negatively impact there. I really think that there's got to be some other additional factors that EGLE is forgetting to include, because I believe that this should be a denied permit at this time. Let us hear how Levy is going to be addressing their slag violations now, not far at all from their desired new location. And why aren't we looking at the concern for our water, for the Rouge River that ties into Detroit River? It was very, very casual mention about that modeling, and oh, we don't really look at it, and it's only a little area that's, you know, the footprint is going over the river. I mean, come on, fellas, and let's really look at this. And we don't want to breathe this stuff. Come on. Do you know where the wind blows? If you look at like literally, we unfortunately get it, the way the wind blows to the northeast and the southwest, no, southeast from the southwest. But I tell you, we are so negatively impacted. Why isn't there a moratorium? Why can't we be protected? No more, no more. We're trying to get the bridge company to move their crazy concrete operations off our riverfront. Then Levy wants to go crush slag. Lord, we've got to find out. They used to give it for free. We've got to find out if we have even, you know, endangered our children who played on this slag. I mean, like, really, I've got to get advice from EGLE. So, Chris, please understand where we're coming from. I'm 67, okay? I've been here. I've got leukemia, I've got CLL, chronic lymphocytic leukemia. I've known when we used to go around and do our interviewing of our people in Delray, there was such an overabundance of, cancers. So I think that we really need to look at this. I want to see more modeling. I want the Gordie Howe modeling to be included with what they're projecting to happen to our air quality. I think EGLE has a responsibility to be way more comprehensive in looking at this area. So thank you very much, Jennifer. You're great. All your team is great, but we are really concerned here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Deb. Appreciate the comments for sure. I'm gonna try to unmute you again, Simone. Just try it one more time and see if we can get you there. I think that Jim sent you maybe some hints on how to make sure your mic is unmuted, and it did look like you were unmuted from our end. So let me just try it here again, and we'll see if we can get you there. All right. Oh, I hear something. Yes, I hear you. Good. Perfect. Kind of perfect. I don't know. It's a little loud. Give it a second.
Apologies.
Nope. There you go. Are you good?
I don't know. Am I?
I mean, you sound okay, but there's kind of like some thumping. So I don't know. Just want to make sure we can hear everything that you're saying.
Yeah, sorry. I should let you know that I tried to be on by phone and was never let in by phone because I do have tech issues. So I usually copy things. So I don't know if other people were stranded on the phone because it told me
we did get another note about that. And so I know this is the hearing, but just to let people know, apologies for that. It could have something to do with the fact that we're doing the interpretive stuff tonight. We're going to look into that though. And again, apologize to everybody who had issues getting in. If you missed any part of the beginning of the meeting, we'll definitely send the recording out to you, but I think we can hear you good enough. If you don't mind, just go ahead and if you don't mind stating your name and any affiliation, and then go ahead with your comment whenever you're ready.
Sure. Simone Zagovac. I'm a resident of Southwest Detroit, zip code 48209, and work with the Southwest Detroit Community Benefits Coalition, which is a project that has worked with the new bridge that's locating there in the community and on air quality issues. I will be submitting written comments, but I wanted to flag a couple of really important things to the community, and that is that diesel emissions by far are the biggest contributor to our negative air quality in the area. We understand that the state does not regulate mobile sources. However, in modeling and with the clear understanding that this bridge is being built and will be bringing at least 7,500 semi-trucks every day into the community, that's 75% of the current truck traffic is predicted to start using the new bridge when it opens in end of 2024 or in 2025. So it's around the corner. Those emissions cannot be subtracted from our future air quality because it's omnipresent, and it's critically important that they be included in any analysis. And we have also been experiencing unprecedented dust across the community, in part, but not only because of the bridge project that's being developed, but we have created a map that shows the multiple and growing cement and concrete related industries that are in this area. It is understandable as a largely industrial area that companies would look to our area to locate, but people are still living in this community, and the air blows beyond the boundaries of this community. And it's critically important that we're holding all industries to the best standards. And the first standard is that you follow the air permits that you have and not be in violation. And so I'm very suspect of any facility getting a permit granted when it hasn't done what it should do with its other facilities. So that's really important to the community to be addressed. And metal slag is also a huge concern for all of us. I'd like to see any studies that demonstrate whether it's being used somewhere else in the state of Michigan now, and what any dispersion of that metal flake is, because it's bad enough that we're breathing dirt and toxic laden dirt from all the open source industry that we have in the area as an open unpaved properties. I understand they intend to pave at this one, but the combination of all of this is just, the totality is not accurately measured. We have to be making sure that we're using the most reflective local monitors and counting as many emission sources that we can before we grant any new permits for any more thousands of tons of new air pollution and particulates in our air. And I'll submit more in writing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm glad we were able to figure out getting you unmuted. I appreciate that. All right, so our next person that has their hand raised is Catherine Savoy. Catherine, if you would like to, should be able to unmute yourself. And yeah, there you go. Go ahead and just state your name and any affiliation for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Catherine Savoy, and I'm a resident of Southwest Detroit, 48216 zip code. And I also work with the Ecology Center, which will be submitting separately comments for our organization. I'm speaking as myself as a resident of the area this evening. And I just want to echo some of the comments that have been made by Simone and others that, you know, I'm really concerned that we're entertaining granting a permit to a company that is already shown that it can't, you know, address the violations it has at existing plants in our community. It doesn't feel right to be giving to be considering that. They should have to get their act together before they get additional rights to pollute in our community. I'm concerned that, you know, this is an area that is inundated with industry. We have all kinds of sources. I don't feel like, especially as Simone mentioned, that the mobile sources are being adequately considered. Those are part of what we breathe every day. This is new emissions. You said 15.4 tons of particulate matter. Already concerned about particulate matter pollution in our community and what it's doing to our health. We really look to EGLE to protect us and to help us, you know, against these big corporations that don't have our interest at heart. And we look to you to do everything within your power and your authority to protect us. And I don't feel like you're doing that in this case. I think dust is too polite a term to use for what we're talking about here. Yeah, if technically it's fugitive dust, but, you know, we're talking about ground blast furnace slag, and, you know, this stuff is harmful to our health. It's metals in there that are harmful to our health, and we already have a lot of that in our air, and in the soils and surrounding our community. You know, just today there was an article in the Detroit Free Press, some Wayne State University research that shows that metal contamination was, quote, ubiquitous in sampling of dust samples along Detroit roads. And we know that it's already a problem in our community. This is additional research to show that it's a problem. You know, we have people in our community that are already suffering from high levels of respiratory issues. And those people are who are more vulnerable to being exposed. So we need to be seeing our emissions going down. And you're telling us, even if it's small, if you think it's small contribution, it feels like a lot to us because people in our community are already suffering, as has been mentioned. You know, we're suffering from asthma, they're suffering from cancer, they're suffering from a lot of different respiratory illnesses. So I think there's more that can be done. I'm also concerned about the impacts of this on the river. It seems like you didn't take that in consideration. The river is really important. This is very close to the river, and we want to see that considered because the river is a really important part of our economy and our community. You know, for these reasons, you know, as was mentioned, we don't want to be the sacrifice zone. We feel like we're the sacrifice zone, and we need your help to consider all of that we're exposed to, all of the sources of pollution, and to, you know, make a decision that protects us. And for these reasons, I oppose granting the Levy company the requested permit for this operation for the slag grinding plant. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine, for your comment. I'm going to go to Ann Byrne. Ann, when you are ready, you should be able to unmute and go ahead and state your name and any affiliation for the record.
Hi, thank you for taking my call and all your assistance to make this this hearing available to our entire community. Ann Byrne, I'm president of the Springdale Woodmere Block Club, and we are the neighborhood in the west end of 48209 that is uniquely situated very close to the Trinity monitor, but we are triangulated by Plant 6, the new proposed plant, and the East Dearborn plant. Additionally, we are right on top of, we're also triangulated by all of the scrap yards. and right by Fort Iron and Metal. And we can talk about all the microns you want in terms of metal dust, but we literally see it flying through our neighborhood daily. When we go to visit our loved ones at Woodmere Cemetery, the dust on the headstones sticks to our magnets. We are at a saturation point, irregardless of what anybody says. We understand that we can't test this, we can't test this in this process, but the process is leaving out how absolutely saturated we are. The fact that because these materials settle and then blow up again, that goes on. We believe the modeling, and just in terms of data, is going to be skewed because 2020, for the first time in a long time, we actually were able to breathe because many of the co-polluters in this area were shut down or limited in their operations. So including that year in the data skews everything. And while some of the logic behind using the Allen Park model makes sense, it doesn't completely. We're also very concerned about the sewage treatment plant and their open tanks and the whole sludge process and these iron oxides and other metal oxides and silicone dioxins settling into that, because we know that that sludge sits right by the Rouge River and will get into the water as it dries. And then it also goes to farms that produce our food. Everyone is knocking on our community's door right now for heart testing, respiratory testing, cancer testing. We're like the guinea pigs to find out what all these levels are, the PFABs, everything else, because they know everyone but EGLE seems to know that we're in this zone of pollution hell. And we simply say, not one more micron, not one more particle. The block club itself, I'm speaking, as myself tonight, the block club will submit official comment.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. Appreciate your comments tonight. So Anne was my last hand raised. We definitely have more time. So if anyone else would like to make a comment tonight, I'll give you just a couple minutes to think about it. And like I said, please just feel free to raise your hand. If you want to do that, you're going to just use that raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen. And we'll get you on there. I also was just checking to make sure nobody had put in any typed in comments in the Q&A for me to read out loud, and I don't see any in here, but I know we had folks that had submitted some good information that we'll be looking at after the meeting today. So I'll give you just a little bit longer here to see if anyone else wants to make a comment before we close the meeting down. Okay, Lisa, hold on one second. All right, you should be able to unmute yourself and go ahead and state your comment whenever you're ready. Oh, please do your name as well and any affiliation you might have.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound great.
Hey, good evening. Lisa Rodriguez, Vice President of Springdale Woodmere Black Club, also Curator of Parks and Green Spaces for UNI, resident of Southwest Detroit for over 22 years. I love my community. I want my community to thrive and breathe and be able to be completely safe in their minds and their hearts that they're living in a healthy community. What I'm wondering about the findings is the impact with local schools, because there's many, on what schools, as far as like particulates around schools at the present moment, what the history of those materials have looked like on soil. I know that quite a few of our schools have community gardens. Often we have our youth and our families playing on the grass playing on the ground. And I'd like to know if there's been any type of studies for those surrounding schools in our community. I love the river. I'm concerned about the matter floating into the river. I know that the EPA MSU has done extensive research on the conditions currently in the water, and also what's being found in the fish. Lead, sugar, poisonings. So I know that the river belongs to the people. I would like to leave this earth knowing that that river stays safe for our community, and our future generations. And I would really consider denying the request from Levy, and really give this land back to the people, and making sure that we have quality air, quality soil, and quality water. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your comment. I appreciate that. All right, we'll just give another minute or so and just make sure nobody else would like to make a comment before we close the meeting tonight. Oh, I had a hand up. Okay, I thought maybe you changed your mind. So hold on one second, Connie, and I will unmute you. All right, you should be able to go ahead and unmute and then speak whenever you're ready. Let's try it one more time here. All right, Connie, you might have to unmute on your side.
Okay.
There you go. Now I can hear you. You sound great.
Okay,
Thank
just a
you.
quick question. Is this going to be recorded and will it be emailed to us?
Yes, yes, and
'cause-
yes. You
Oh,
got it.
good. All right, great. Thank you.
Okay, no
Okay,
problem.
thank you.
All right, Chris, I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing out if that's okay with you. Okay, thank you. So to close the meeting out, I just need to read a little bit more out of the statement for everybody, and then we'll get to some other information that might be helpful for you. So thank you so much for taking the time to participate in the hearing tonight. We really do appreciate your interest in protecting Michigan's air quality. As indicated at the beginning of the hearing, the public comment period will close at midnight on October 23, 2023. All interested parties, anyone who provided comments during the public comment period, and anyone who attended this public hearing will be directly notified of the final decision on the proposed permit. So the hearing is now closed. Thank you again. We're going to go through just a couple other things really quick to give you all a little bit more information on how you might be able to further participate in this process. One of the things that we did get questions about in our question box is how can you still submit official comments? And I know you heard some of the commenters today indicate that they were going to be submitting written comments. So you can submit written comments to us. That's no problem at all. We'll also take any comments to our voicemail box. Our email box, which is EGLE-AQD-PTI public comments. And PTI public comments is all one word, and that's at michigan.gov. So a lot of people like to just give us a call and voice their comment like we did tonight. And you can do that really easily at 517-284-0900. Any information that we have online that's available for you to review related to this project, which there are multiple languages and some of that information as well. There's Spanish and Arabic versions, but you can find that at michigan.gov/EGLE Air Public Notice, and EGLE is EGLE, and that's Air Public Notice, all one word. And I think Caitlin shared that in the chat earlier. So if you're looking for that, that was shared earlier. And then you're just going to want to pick open for comment on that. That's going to get you to information like the proposed project translated into Arabic and Spanish. The technical fact sheet has a lot of the details about the rules and regulations related to that. You can also find the proposed permit terms and conditions that as they're proposed, if you want to make comments on some specific things. And then we will post link to the things, but like Connie asked, we will also be sharing those out to everyone. So if you were part of this, we will definitely be sending those links via email along with a bunch of follow-up information, other things that we might have come upon as we were going through the meeting tonight. Then what we'll do here is just showing you the folks that you heard on the panel today. So if you have specific questions about the permit, not necessarily a comment, but maybe you need some clarification on the draft permit, feel free to reach out to Jake. If you have a complaint about another facility in Wayne County, Jeff Korniski will take those complaints right to his regular phone. You can also send him an email. He's more than willing to help out with that kind of stuff. And then we have Susan and Jim and Mike Deppa on there as well. You can also always call our pollution emergency number if you have a complaint, and that is 1-800-292-4706. And I should have that memorized because I've said it so many times and I found myself reading it again. So, but definitely utilize that number if you have any concerns about air quality in your area. We're happy to take those there as well. Okay, so again, I want to just thank everybody who stayed on this entire time. Again, we greatly, greatly appreciate your commitment to Michigan's air quality. Thank you again to all of our wonderful interpreters. We really appreciate the time and energy that you've spent with us today. And thanks a lot to our panelists. So I'm going to let the rest of you all go for the evening, and I really hope you have a good one, and we look forward to talking to you all again soon.